Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Huh? So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Hey, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you are a fan of comic books, if you're a fan of comic book conventions, and if you like meeting comic book creators and getting comics and comic-related stuff, then you need to make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con. This year's show is September 7th and 8th. Silverline will be there, so you should make your plans to be there too. We'll see you there. If you like comics and find yourself in the Orlando, Florida area, doesn't everyone come to Orlando at some point in time to see the House of Mouse? But when you're here, you need to make it a point to visit Coliseum of Comics, especially the one on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline comics, even a limited edition Coliseum of Comics version of our comics. So, when you go, be sure to ask for Silverline Comics and tell them we sent you. OCD stands for Orlando Collector Deviants. OCD, Steve and Trish, they're a family of geeks who promote geek things, particularly those around the Orlando, Florida area. They're big supporters of Silverline, and we think you should be supporters of theirs too. Go give them some love. If you are an independent comic book maker and you need to get your independent comics made, you need to look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our books, and they do a bang-up job. They're not only trusted by Silverline, but many independent comic book makers. Head on over to kablam.com and see for yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Kilber, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday nights as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline. What's up, everyone? How is everyone tonight?
Tired.
Doing very well, very well.
Doing fine, doing great.
Welcome, everyone, to Silverline's Silver Sunday, this Sunday night, October the 16th, 2022, year of our Lord. Look at that. Charles is already speaking up. Charles, he resisted the urge to say first, right? Y'all remember that, right? Everybody, the first one.
Oh, they're supposed to say. Yep.
Yeah, the first one to comment on a post would say first. What's up, Charles? Glad you are joining us tonight. Tonight we have a wait. I gotta change JC's name here. So tonight we have a Silver Sunday. Thank you everyone for joining us. Shout out to our. I got distracted. Shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. We don't know the date of that one for 2023 yet because we just had it about a couple of weeks ago. So
a month or so.
As soon as we get the dates for that one, we will let you know so that you can put it on your calendar and make plans to attend. If you like comics and comic conventions, this is the place you need to plan to go because it is all about comics. Daytona Beach Comic Con. Shout out to Orlando Collector Deviants. It's fan-driven, about fans, about fan experience. So follow Orlando Collector Deviants. If you are in the Orlando area and you are looking for comic books, particularly if you're looking for Silverline comics, you need to make sure you go by Coliseum of Comics. You can find stores all over Orlando area, but particularly go to Claremont or go to East Colonial Drive and ask for Silverline comics. They have them there, and in fact, they've got them there with a special little Coliseum of Comics logo on it. They are special editions with special edition covers that has their logo on it just for Coliseum of Comics, and we thank them. We
have a whole rack. So come on
a whole
over.
rack there. I'm going to add a picture here so I can share that.
Yeah.
And so yeah, let's go to Coliseum Comics, and then of course, lastly but not leastly, I don't have a comic book in my hands. Shout out to Kablam. Tommy, duck your head just a little bit.
Who's that? Who's Kablam?
You're not wearing a hat today, are you?
Oh.
No, you're not. Shout out to Kablam. If you're an independent comic book creator and you need a comic book published, you should look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. one of the reasons that we here at Silverline like Kablam so much is that they're not quote unquote just duck your head just a little bit, Tommy. There you go, Kablam. We like them because
it was Halloween. I had a Halloween hat on. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, all right. Yeah. They're not just a printer. They are also creators. So Kablam is a look at that. You're getting some shout outs here. Apex Comics says Kablam.
Kablam.
They are Kablam is a printing company. That's their specialty. Comic books is their specialty. That's pretty much. Tommy, would you say that's do like 99%? That's all that you do.
Right? That's all that we do. We have the stuff that we could do everything else, but they. I don't know who they are. Those guys. That's all that they do. They just do comics.
And so they are creators. Also, they make comic books and they print comic books. So
yeah, those guys have been working since the early '90s in the comic book industry.
Yes, they have. Yep.
Yeah.
Not as Kablam. They've been working as creators.
And then I think 15, 20 years now. Kablam's been going.
Yeah, that's a long time. So would you say this is probably the longest running comics print on demand company around?
I keep saying we. I don't mean we. They keep. Some other folks pop up, and then they realize that it's hard work. Yeah, it's really hard work. Yeah, especially having to deal with folks that don't really know how to put the books together and all that kind of stuff. So those guys are really, really patient.
Good. So if you are looking for a place to have your comic book printed, go to Kablam. All the order stuff is real easy to fill all that kind of stuff up. LDD.
I think there's a Silverline.
What?
I think there's a Silverline order for the latest Kickstarter in queue.
There is.
I heard that they may start working on it this week.
Yay!
I just heard. I heard that. I heard that.
I hope you're right. LBG hashtag free the net says I used to go to Coliseum of Comics for meeting cards.
Magic the Gathering.
Oh, Magic the Gathering. Yeah.
Where have you been? How long you been doing this?
I was trying to make that say management.
Management cards.
Magic the Gathering cards. Okay, yeah. I never got into Magic the Gathering. I'm sorry. Yeah,
we did for a little bit.
He's still in Magic. Yeah,
there you go.
About that, yeah. Orlando, that's right, Orlando, down here where we get lots of water. Which says hello, big dummy, and the bike man. Put y'all on Facebook. Thank you so much.
Got a name now. At least I'm not a big dummy. I'm just a bike guy.
Just wait. You wait. So tonight with us we've got Tommy. Say hi, Tommy.
Hi, Tommy.
What's up? That's so this is for the audio, so that because people can't hear when we
whose voice is whose,
right? So this is what. Yep. And we have we're missing some folks tonight. We don't know where they are.
I sent out a note asking if if I could wake Pete up. I'm sure he fell asleep.
But you know what the rule is, right? If you're not here, we talk about you.
I know. Pete's asleep.
Right. So we'll talk about Pete and Curtis and Roberta because they're not here. Atrocity Press
podcast
says,
version of drawing the marker stuff.
That's right. That's exactly it. Yeah, you draw on them, right? What's up, Atrocity Press? Thanks for stopping by. I hope you got some good legal questions because we have with us. Oh, that's right. I was in the middle of changing. Tell me if I get this wrong. We have Joshua Caleb Barton with us tonight.
And I hear congratulations is now.
Are in order.
I missed it last time you were on, and I had some questions for you. And what was I doing? I don't know how I missed it last time. I think I had to go. I think I was in Mississippi or something.
Is that correct?
Yes,
your
sir.
name there?
Yes,
all
sir.
right. So the last time JC was here with us,
you need to put Mr. in front.
He was studying to be. He was studying for the bar. To take the bar here in Florida. For those of you who don't know, the bar is that great big test that you got to take in order to get your legal license. Now, JC, how long was that test? Because I remember you telling me it was a
2-day test.
Dang.
So yeah, it was definitely a marathon of an exam. You're just sitting there for hours and hours. Yes.
Did you say 2 days? Did they at least let you go home, or you had to just stay there?
They locked you in.
So, so you did have to stay like nearby, right? But they allowed you to like go go sleep, right? Like
Oh,
some
okay.
people stayed there like at hotels nearby, and just did what they had to do, and then you go there, you stop testing at night, and then you go right back early in the morning to continue testing.
Wow.
Wow.
Cool. Good for you. Cool.
That sounds tough. Yeah, at my university we don't give tests like that.
Really can't keep the people in, there for an hour, and then they go, I'm going to go
I'm
on to
telling you,
something else.
listen, they complain about having to read stuff. I'm like, but wait, you're studying to be a writer. Why are you complaining about reading stuff, man? Here we go. We got more comments here. Bobby Westwood says, "Bye, dummy bike man." There you go.
Can we cut him off? Cut him off. Cut him off.
Trusty says, "Yay, logic games." I'm not sure what that means.
Yeah, those are
that's a lawyer
prevalent
thing, huh?
on the LSAT especially. Logic games are very heavy on the LSAT. Not as heavily tested on the bar. The bar really.
You're testing. Yeah, logic games and you're testing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So before we get to, I know there's more comments here, but before we get to deep, we need to let folks know, because if they're popping in, they're like, well, why do I really want to hear from a lawyer, right? But specifically, folks who listen to this stream, your specialty is what?
Intellectual property law, and also business law. So
which is exactly what all these comic book people, right, should need to know. It's intellectual properties, because that's what we make, right? With the stuff that the comic books that we make is all about intellectual properties. And so I know that JC and I have talked before somewhat in that a lot of independent comics just don't have a lot of the resources to know a lot of this stuff. So hopefully some of them will pop in tonight and maybe ask some questions that they're not sure about, or like haven't been able to find out. So hopefully we'll get some of those questions. Comics Talk with Pop says, "Hey yo, what's up, Pops?" And he says, "Hey Silverline, LDG Max, and Apex, and Charles." He's just shouting out to everybody, and he says, "Hey yo, over here too." Oh, he must have been on it.
Cool.
So intellectual property. Now, would you say, and this is just me asking a curious question here, would you say that's not a field? All right, so when we think of lawyers, we often think of ambulance chasers, right? The guys that go, they see a car wreck and they go down and let me try to get you money from the insurance company, right? We think of that, or maybe I'm in the middle of a nasty divorce, I got to get a lawyer for that. Though that's the kind of common, I think anyway, that people think of when they think of lawyers. I would guess that intellectual property law is not a very common thing to practice, right? Is that an accurate statement?
That's true, but it depends on what state you're in, how what percentage of lawyers are doing IP. So it's definitely not the major area of law that you generally if you meet a lawyer, right, most times out of 10 it's not going to be an intellectual property lawyer.
Yeah. I would say, and certainly in because you are based out of Florida.
Yes, sir.
So, and I would say certainly in Florida, that's probably even more true. Like maybe if we were in LA, you might your chances would probably increase of bumping into an intellectual property lawyer. Maybe in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say
exactly.
Yeah. So without naming them, do you know any other intellectual property lawyers in Florida?
In Florida, I do.
Okay.
I know one more in Florida. Everyone else I know who's an intellectual property lawyer, they practice in different states.
Different states, yeah. So one would think, and one might not be accurate, but one would think that might give you an advantage, but by practicing something in this state that not very many people practice.
Right. Yes, sir. Especially, where there's a need, and then you're able to, to fulfill a need and help those with that need out. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Very cool. Bob says, go sub Silverline on YouTube. Yes, go sub. Oh, man, I always forget that. Please, wherever you're watching us or listening to us, please remember to like, subscribe, hit that little bell for the notifications, share it out. Right, we need to get our numbers up so that so more people can know when we go live and we talk about cool stuff like this. So I added the ESQ at the that's the correct. You are now Joshua Caleb Barton Esquire, right?
Yes, sir.
Excellent.
Yes, sir.
Well, congratulations to you. I think
Thank
you know
you.
that you had a big cheering squad here with Silverline.
Yes,
Cheering
sir.
you on and sending good vibes and well wishes your way.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So Tommy, you said you had a list of questions. Do you wanna jump in with the first one? So look at your list. So no, just go ahead and look at your list. So I just want to say, so the last time JC was here, and JC, if I'm saying something wrong, you correct me now. Last time JC was here, we would ask questions and he would say, and you weren't able to answer a lot of those things specifically because you hadn't taken the bar yet. So you had to say, well, the law says this, in order to be very specific to basically you had to kind of guard your answers. Now you are able to answer because you do have that Esquire beside your name now. Yeah. You're able to say, this is the fact, Jack.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The funny thing with the law, right? The only asterisk that remains is that, right, certain issues that might get into like personal representation type things, right? You know, there's a line there where, okay, you know, personal representation that can't be crossed unless there's like a contract signed, stuff like that.
Gotcha.
Right? But everything that doesn't cross that line, we're good. Since like
so it's kind of like that thing with you go to just a doctor on the street and you go, hey, I got this wrong. You say, well, here's probably what's wrong, but I'm not your doctor, so you can't.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
So I would ask you a favor then, and because I know you, I think you'll agree to it. Should we ask you something like that? And again, would you clarify to us? Hey, I can't. This is one of those instances where I can't do this because I need more information, or that kind of thing.
Yes, sir. Yes,
so for instance, I say, I can guarantee you spend time with Tommy, there's going to be blood, right?
You ran, that tree just jumped out in the way and you ran into it. I didn't have anything to do with that. I told you there was a tree coming.
All right. All right, Tommy, ask your first question.
Okay, well, all right, just in general, I guess, what is the difference between getting, having a trademark on something and a copyright on something?
Ooh, good. I love that one.
Yeah, this is a lot of, we go around and around with people a lot with this kind of stuff. And so what are, I mean, I think I know, but, for the people out there, what is your definition? Or what is the real definition?
What's the legal definition?
Right, so the difference between the two is that a copyright is something that you get to protect a work of art, whether it's a song or a picture, a script, comic book script, screenplay, whatever it is, right? It is the ownership, it's the protective ownership of that work of art so that you have the right to sell it, so that you have the right to show it publicly, so that you have the right to make copies of it, right? The right to copy it, right? Exactly. And so that's what a copyright is. A trademark is an identifier that goes next to a product or service in order to identify the source of that product or service. All right. And so there's some overlap in the sense that you can copyright a song or a jingle, and then you can use that jingle as a trademark, right? So there could be a jingle that accompanies your products or services and is an identifying thing, right? Like no fast food company can just make ba-da-ba-ba-ba, right? Their calling card, right? They would get sued to oblivion, right? Because we all know when we hear ba-da-ba-ba-ba, we know exactly who that is, exactly which company, right? That that little jingle has actually become a trademark, right? That's used to identify the source of, in this case, those burgers and French fries, right? And so you can actually have the same type of medium, and then you have a copyright on that medium, and you can have a trademark on that medium. But the difference is the fact that the trademark is used for the purpose of identifying goods or services.
Well, what would both of these have to do with comic book stuff?
So then with comic books, when you write your script, right, or when you draw out the image of the character, that's you can have a copyright on those things. There's a common law copyright that you have automatically, right? But if you want like more protection,
That's the next question.
so then I'll save that one on to be continued.
No. Go. That's great.
So then, basically, if you have a common law protection, a common law copyright, that you have that the moment you create the work, right? The moment you write the script, the moment you draw the character or whatever have you, you automatically have a common law copyright on that work. However, it's limited in certain regards, okay? If somebody else in another place comes up with a work that's similar, but they don't know you, there's no way, like they had no contact with your work when they created their own, right? Then they'll actually have the ability they'll have their own common law copyright on that work. And essentially you'll kind of be limited to whatever geographic location in which you had been using that copyright. And then the same thing with them, right? But what happens is when you get a federal copyright, what essentially happens is we say that puts people on constructive notice of the existence of your work. Okay. And so what that means is that it's a legal assumption that everybody, of course, before they draw a character or come up with a script, is searching through the the tens of thousands of millions of copyrights to make sure that they're not infringing, right? Right. So that's the legal presumption that's made. And so essentially everybody is deemed to either know or to constructively know, which means they either know or should have known, right, that this work is copyrighted. So unlike the common law example I gave you, where you came up with character X and then someone else came up with character similar to X, right? And neither of you knew about each other, but y'all came up with this thing in different areas, and y'all kind of have a common law copyright to your version of character X within the domain in which you were using character X. Unlike that scenario, when you have a federal copyright, you have your copyright, and then if person B creates character similar to X, right, you can go after that person because it is presumed that they knew of your character when they created theirs, whether they did or not, right? Assuming the exact same facts, they had no clue, right? But because you have that federal copyright, it is presumed. Like knowledge is legally presumed. They are legally presumed to have constructive knowledge of your character.
So the difference between the two is one's actually been filed with the government, right? Mm-hmm. Compared to the common law. The common law is more of just you getting something printed in your area of say in Orlando or something, compared to something that's actually officially filed. Is that what you're saying?
Right. So that is one of the differences, is that when you file it with the federal government, right, on that registry, it is presumed that everybody in the nation has notice of it, right?
Because you can search for it at that point. So when you hear people talking about doing the copyright search to see if something has already exists or whatever, that's where they're going to look into the official. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, and another thing is, with the common law copyright, obviously one benefit is that you don't have to file or do anything in order to have it, right? As soon as you create the work, it's yours, right? Mm-hmm. But if someone, if character similar to X owner comes after
that was question number 2.
So if character similar to X owner comes after you, who owns character X, right? Well, now you're in a legal battle, and the real thing that decides who's going to win this thing is who created. Like if y'all are in the same area, right? If y'all are like actually stepping on each other's toes, the thing that's going to determine it is who came up with the character first, right? And so in that case, you're trying to show, oh, I've got this documentation, or oh, I sent an email on this date at this time, or oh look, right, every day I journal in my diary and I put the date in there, and here it is, and it says it was this day, right? And so you're trying to prove before a jury or before a judge, depending on how you do it, but you're trying to prove before a jury, hey, here's all this proof I have that I came up with character X, at a date that happens to be before when person B can prove they came up with character similar to X. And now the interesting thing is that you could have come up with character X. Let's say you came up with character X 5 years ago, right? But the earliest proof you have is from 3 years ago, right? Well, if person B came up with their character 4 years ago, so they did come up with it after yours, but they have proof that they came up with it 4 years ago, and the most you have is proof of 3 years ago. Well, bada boom, bada bang, they now own that. Right.
Yeah, and we're talking about the comic books for the most part here, so it's more like something being printed, right? In this case,
right.
So that's why would you say it's a great idea if you come up with an idea, go ahead and get your comic book printed, even if you only print a few copies.
That's true. That's like a really good way. I mean, you don't actually have to print the comic book. Like if you do something as simple as send it in an email to yourself, right? That accomplishes, the same thing. Basically, you just need some like verifiable means of attaching a date.
We were always told that mailing something to yourself didn't count.
Poor man's copyright.
So when it comes to a common law copyright, right? If you're talking about a court case between two people who are in the same geographic location, what matters in that case, is.
I have a poor man's copyright from
last week.
No, I got to change glasses to get to my date. 87.
Oh my goodness.
1987. I don't know if you can see that date. See it right there?
Yeah. Yep.
1987.
Right.
Because
what's in there?
This is I'll tell you later. This is the kind of thing that this is the kind of thing that we were taught back then, is to put your idea in an envelope and register mail it. Whoops, it just fell off.
Oh, it doesn't count anymore. It's no good.
To yourself, right? And you can see this is back when I lived in Mississippi, right? Register mail it to yourself, and then keep a separate copy. But then if you ever have to go to court, you take this in, and it can be opened by the judge in court, right? And then this is, you can see it stamped over the seal. And that was so it sounds like your email to yourself is similar to this idea. Would you?
This is electronic.
It is similar to that idea. Yes, sir. Because what you're trying to do is you're simply trying to create evidence of when you came up with this idea, because that's what the court would be looking for if you're talking about a common law copyright situation.
Yeah. That's interesting.
So what would you do if, which is question number 5, based off of, all these things we're going through, most of this stuff which is really cool. What would you do, or how would you handle, I guess would be the other way of saying it, even if by accident you came up with something at the same time somebody else came up with a something similar, of an idea of some characters or whatever, a character. So like if all of a sudden you publish something and then you realize that somebody else has got something
let's say Champion and Miss Fury, right? Let's just go with that. Let's just use that as an example if you want to, Tommy.
Well, yeah. What should you do? This book is out. The Champion Miss Fury book is out, and then all of a sudden somebody else is putting out a Champion Miss Fury book that's really similar. But even if by accident, we'll just say that it's by accident. Maybe not, but we'll say it's by accident. What would you do, or what should you do to get in touch with these people and say, look, this is really weird. You came up with almost identical to something that I did.
So then,
I wish you would stop.
so I mean, the question is, are we talking about a common law copyright or are we talking about a registered copyright?
Well, I mean, I'm guessing we're assuming if it's registered, you could just go, boom, look, this is registered. I'm sorry, you got to stop. But if it's a common law thing,
So
then
what you would want to do is you would want to speak with a lawyer. Okay, you would want to get an intellectual property lawyer.
somebody with Esquire on the back of their name, like you.
Right, with an
All right,
ESQ
all right.
right there. Yes, sir. And then you'll want to, they'll go forward with representation, asking you some questions and things like that, right? And then they can, send a very well-written notice and letter to whoever the alleged infringer is, and then it would go from there.
Cool. There's I'll let you take a break for a minute, Tommy. You good with that?
Okay, I'm taking it.
Okay. All right. So Herrenberg says he does have illegal questions.
All right, good.
He says, so Herrenberg, for those who may or may not know, Herrenberg makes they have a comic, but they do a live action video with a lot of female superheroes. Tommy, for you, think of oh shoot, who's the local guy over in Daytona who does all the female driven comics? Yeah, you do. Bill Black. I think.
Right. Yeah, Bill Black.
So his question is this: I've been featuring
and all those guys.
Feline character Savannah in live action vids since 2017 and comics since 2019. Today, I noticed DC's Crime Syndicate issue number 2 debuted feline character Savannah in 2021. Is this a reason for concern? And then actually he added, back in 2016, I cleared the name on Comic Book Database, and there was no character called that yet.
So that actually would be if the characters are similar enough, and I'm just going to assume that they are based on the question, right?
Yeah.
The characters are similar enough, and they happen to have the exact same name of all things,
Yeah.
right? I think that it would be wise to go, speak with an intellectual property lawyer and discuss what the next steps could be, right? Because that could be something. There could be something there. There could potentially be some infringement there. In which case, there could be some legal remedies.
Right. So let me add some stuff onto Herrenberg's question. Let's say this is the same scenario, and let's say Herrenberg has evidence. Obviously, he's got comic books from 2019, and he's got videos made in 2017. And let's say you do a federal search, and you come up with DC has claimed that name because they're not going to know local, right? So they have claimed that name in 2021, but Herrenberg has evidence that his goes back to 2017. What's the kind of the recourse, or what's kind of an example of what could happen in that situation?
Right. So in a situation like that, I mean, if you're talking about, somebody else has a federally registered copyright and what you've got as a local, you might be able to get a situation where they cannot use that name inside of a particular area. Right. It'll be that's a harder row to hoe, but it's not completely impossible, especially if you've really established that, you've got all your evidence for your timeline, and when you came up with this thing, you fixed it to a tangible medium, which I'm guessing has been done if you've had comic books printed and all these sort of things. And so you might be able to have a situation where within a certain area, right? And for a company as big as DC, right, that could be a problem, right? Yeah. Because when they create a character, I mean, it's worldwide, basically, right? Yep. Let alone throughout the nation.
You're right.
So you might end up in a situation where DC is willing to kind of, come to the table
Buy you off.
if there's some sort of, if they all can the two of you can settle on something, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and of course I'm familiar with excuse me, Herrenberg's product, so I know that that's well established in his local area. I don't know if he wants to say where, so I'll leave that up to him. I know where it is, but I know he's well established in that area, both through the videos and through the comics there. So, okay, so he adds another question. He says, "Are we even local?" I guess I could put it up so you can read it too. Sorry. He says, "Are we even local if our comic is sold in 200 stores and 20 Comic Cons, plus our vids are downloaded worldwide?"
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is one of the things where, there are certain aspects of copyright law, right, which are still made from, during a time where we didn't have all of this instant worldwide availability,
Before the
right?
internet.
Yeah.
Right, through the
I mean,
internet,
what's local now? Everything, there is nothing really local, right?
Yeah.
right. And what essentially is that would get to is, where do people know your character, right? Where have you gathered or garnered some sort of an audience, and factors like this would start coming into play with determining, if you've got some sort of presence, because essentially what's going on is this, right? There would have to be enough for DC to have either, I mean, it's going to be hard to prove actual notice, but you would need to at the very least be able to prove constructive notice, which is saying that, had you done your due diligence, you would have known that this character, blah, 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 right? And, if somebody searches Savannah, is your character the first thing that pops up?
Yeah, or just do a Google search. You did. It sounds like they didn't even type the name in and put. Yeah, that's pretty bad.
So, so if if things like that are the case, right? First page results, or the very first result that pops up is your character when that name is popped up. Right now, you're starting to have a situation where you can argue that that had they done reasonable due diligence, right, that they would have known, that this character was in use and things like this. So all of that would play in. And again, what you would want to do is go to an intellectual property lawyer, because it sounds like, just from the tidbits that I just heard, right, it sounds like there's actually, the potential for it sounds like there's potential infringement there.
Yeah.
So you would want to definitely, I wouldn't just ignore that one. I would actually, go speak with, in private, have like a personal one-on-one, set up the consult, right, with an IP lawyer, and see where, what your options might be.
So in a case like this, right, and we can kind of use Herrenberg as an example, but in a case like this, as an intellectual property attorney, what would you want the creator, the potential client, what would you want to see from them? What kind of evidence would you want them to present to you to say, hey, look, here's kind of some of my proof? Would you want to see everything, or would you want to see just a little bit, or what kind of stuff would you want to see in order to kind of make in your mind, okay, I think we've got a case here?
So I would want to know when I need evidence as far as when the character was created, right? I would like to see, and these are none of what I'm about to say. Not everything I'm about to say is stuff that's required. You asked me what I would like to see, right? So I would like to see when the character was created, and I would, ideally, right, in order for there to be any sort of, actionable situation here, I would like it to be, far in advance of whenever this potentially infringing character came about or came into being. I would like to know that there are people who know of this character, of this potential client's character, at least in his local area, maybe in a broader area, right? If you happen to have, if there are, little fan groups, for example, so, fan groups of the character here and there, all over the place, that would be information I would want to know. I'd want to know where, how easy is the character to find, right? If, do I have to, put all of this extra stuff in order to bring up the character in the search engine, right? How easy is the character to find if I were to just search, Savannah comic book or something, right? So, how easy is it to find? I'd want to know that information. I'd want to know if the client has had any contact with DC or anybody from DC, if the character was ever discussed in any sort of environment in which people from that company might have been present or listening or whatever have you. I'd want to know things like that. I'd want to know who's working on the comic, the Savannah comic, right? I'd want to know information about them to the extent that the client has it. If the client has had any relationship with anybody who's working on this comic book, right? Like, all of these things are things that I would want to know. Has the character been sent in any, contests for anything DC has done, come up with a new character, or, something like, has any of this sort of stuff gone on? These are just some of the things that I would want to.
Would it matter if how popular or not that the character is, if it's even if it's a common law or the official registered one? Does it matter if the person's it just say that he put out 5 issues and he only sold like 300 copies total? Does it still matter that nobody read his book, but he had it out way before they did? No, I'm just saying. Yeah,
no, I agree. I see what you're saying. Yeah. Because that's the case for a lot of independent comics.
A lot, because through Kablam, we print lots and lots and lots and lots of books, right? Yeah. And people,
but lots of 20 copies, 30 copies, 50 copies, 100 copies.
That's not it's not Spider-Man sales. People don't know these characters and stuff. But all of a sudden, somebody DC starts We're saying DC. We're not in trouble for saying anybody. We're not saying, but say that they did do some. They used a character that just so happens to look just like the one that you came up with and named the same thing and all that kind of stuff. So does it matter how? I don't want to say unpopular because that sounds like a bad thing. Does it matter that it's not a big mainstream kind of popular character like?
It does if you're talking about common law copyrights. Okay, it does. Because all of that goes to show, where the character has been used, who knows of the character, all of these sort of things, right? Because you could have a situation where, and this is where both trademark and copyright come into play, right? Because usually comics tend to be named after the characters who are inside of, who are the main, part of the comic, right? Like Spider-Man, or Amazing Spider-Man or the Hulk or whatever, right? So usually the comics are actually named after the characters, right? Otherwise, it's kind of hard to know without already knowing, okay, who's in the characters. Right. And so if you have a situation, understand this, right? DC, if they're, or these big boys or anybody who has a lawyer, because a lawyer would tell you this, right? If you're going to make a character, you're not just getting a copyright, you're getting the trademark on the name. Right, because who knows if this is the logo? Knows if this is the next, whatever popular character, right? So you want that trademark on that name, so you could end up in a situation where, sure, you've got a copyright to like what in a local area, but you might not even be able to have the name of your character as the title line in the comic book with that character, right? Because you've got a copyright of what this character looks like, right? But you can't even, you can't even use that name as the identifier of the source of the comic, right? And so, it's, so these things kind of intertwine a little bit, right? Because one thing we all know, right? DC, Marvel, etc., they have lawyers, right? They have, And that's part of the reason why they make so much money is because the lawyers tell them, okay, do X, do Y, do Z, right? And now they've got that into a formula. They just do it every single time, right? And so, so part of that evaluation when you're talking about the copyright and the trademark, if, assuming you actually want to have the name of your character on the comic book, for that character, right? How many people know of the character and what, how broad geographically, how broad the geographic span of knowledge of this character is actually going to be important when you're talking about a common law situation.
Yeah. Vic says, sorry I'm late. No worries, Vic. Glad you're here. Anyway, all right, Herrenberg throws a twist to you, JC. He says, age 11, I submitted Savannah to Wolfman and Inventino's Dial H for Hero, which is several years ago. Possible DC even has the submission file. So he's saying it's possible DC even still has that submission file. They credited the creators of Kaleidoscope, which was in Suicide Squad 2, 40 years later. So it sounds like he submitted Savannah to Dial H for Hero 40 years ago.
Right. And so you see, right, now this is one of the things that popped into my head, right, as a lawyer when I heard, the first question, right? And now we get to something like this, and it's like, okay, well, part of the, when you send that character in, you are agreeing, not even implicitly, you're expressly agreeing, right, that they have the right to use this character, ownership to the character, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? And so, when you send it into them, I mean, you're expressly agreeing to all of these things.
So basically, he just gave it away.
Right. He gave it away at 11 years old, right? And so they have, and that's one thing with these companies, they just have like this stockpile of all these characters from the golden age and the silver age where, all the boys were reading comic books pretty much,
right.
And so everybody's sending in all these ideas. So they have a bunch of extremely, imaginative, creative, zany youth, right? Sending them a ton of ideas, and they just sit on these things. And then whenever they want, they can just go back through their ledgers, right? And then just pull up a character, 50 years later. Oh, yes, let's use that one now, right?
Well, so let me ask you this then. So isn't there some kind of stipulations or rules or whatever in place that if you don't use it for a certain period of time, it kind of falls back into not I guess public domain is what I'm looking for, but that's not what I'm thinking. But like if you don't use it for a certain period of time, can't someone else kind of pick up that name and run with it?
Yes, sir. What you're talking about is when things become like, back into the public domain.
Okay.
But when you're talking about a copyright though, right? I mean, you're talking about at the very minimum life of the author plus 70, right? And so, it's one of those things where, I mean, eventually, right? Like Mickey Mouse is just now getting to that point, right?
Right.
Again.
What happened?
No, several times now. See, I shouldn't talk about the mouse. They're listening.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's it's very, very interesting. They have definitely flexed some muscle and
had rules changed a couple times.
Had laws changed, right?
Yeah.
They got the laws changed. They did.
Yeah.
Yep. And so, so you're talking about life of author plus 70 years, right? Or if they consider this a work for hire, right? Because, technically, right, maybe it could be considered a work for hire, right? Depending on how the contract that you're agreeing to, right? Because, I'm sure nobody has the comic in which they saw the thing saying Dial H for Hero, right? And there's all this fine print underneath that, right, that you're agreeing to, right?
Right.
And, I'm sure nobody has the comic, and if we wanted to get it, it'd probably cost like $100,000 because it'd be a collectible now, right?
Right.
But as if I was this person's lawyer, I might actually go find the fine print, right? Read the fine print, find out what my client actually agreed to at 11 years old, right? But depending on that fine print, it actually might determine, okay, what does this? How long is the period of protection, right? Because it could be 70, it could be life of author plus 70 years, it could be a minimum of 95 years after publication, or 120 years after creation.
Wow.
Right, and so right, but in either of the scenarios, whichever of the three, it might fall under, right? It's definitely not in, it would not be, open for general use right now,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So, so that's just, the way that it goes.
Herrenberg, he adds, he goes, I just thought it was ironic. That's all. He goes, the actual creation of DC Savannah is credited to writer Andy Smith in 2021, not from 1980, which is when the Dial H for Hero contest was run. And he says he's found that today on Comic Vine. Thanks for the talk. And then he says, oh, Savannah never appeared in Dial H. It was just submitted by me, along with about 10 other characters. And those Dial H books aren't worth anything. They're ever. Well, I was also going to say, for things like that, a lot of those, even those old Golden Age books, things like that, you can find those digitally. Maybe not. Some of them are in like public domain websites. Here, you can read this comic. I know I found a website that was like, this is some Golden Age public domain comic books that you can read, which is kind of cool.
Right.
Good question, Herrenberg. Thanks for bringing that. So earlier you talked a little bit about the trademarks and the copyrights and explained some of the differences between those. So sometimes I see an R with a circle in it. What is that, and how is it different from the trademark and copyright?
So the R just lets you know what status the trademark has, right? Because you have registered trademarks, you have unregistered trademarks, you have trademarks that are like in the midst of, going through the process, and, they filed the papers and everything, but everything hasn't gone through yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically all that does is it just tells you what type of trademark the individual has. When you look and you see the C, right, seeing that circle, that is related to the copyright. But when you're talking about like the R and everything, that's talking about, whether or not the trademark is registered or whether or not it's been, put through that full process. Because, of course, once you file, right, that's not the end of it, right? Once you file for a trademark, you don't automatically have one. You have to, go through, it's a whole process. I've done it multiple times. So basically, you file with the USPTO, and then the USPTO has an attorney who goes and looks at it, right?
Yeah, because they've got to research it, right?
Right, exactly. And then they'll send you back if there's, issues or whatever have you, right? And they'll tell you, we advise you to get it with an attorney before you answer this, right? But, here's what we noticed, blah, blah, blah. And then, there's like this whole process before they approve it, if they do approve it, as far as trademarks are concerned. So there's like a whole process there. And so you cannot advertise your mark as if it is registered until it actually has been registered trademark.
So that was going to be my next question. I was trying to find a book to pull out. So so just all right. So this is my comic book bear, right? So could I put a TM right here to say this is something I've trademarked, but I haven't submitted it to any kind of submission, any kind of federal. Could I just go ahead and put the TM there?
Right. So
does it mean anything that you do? That would be the other part of the question.
So yeah, like the TM symbol, right? It basically just indicates that you're claiming rights with that mark, and that it's made to potentially deter, of course, others from using it.
Right.
And so you can use that as like a common law trademark, right?
But I could not put the R there, right?
Right, because the R means that it's been registered. You go through the USPTO process.
Okay. Gotcha. So. Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. I did not know that was the difference. I knew that R meant registered, but I didn't know the difference between the R and the TM.
So you would recommend?
That was my next question.
Do that, right? Go ahead and whatever. I mean, to put the trademark, just a TM on the back of everything, your logo or that kind of stuff.
Right. You should do that every single time. Without, I mean, unless you have it registered and put the R, right? But
right.
R is stronger than TM.
Right, exactly.
The R trumps the TM. Okay.
Exactly. Now,
No,
if your mark is associated with a service, right, which of course most comic books are not, they're associated with goods, right?
right.
But if your mark is associated with a service, you would put an SM, not a TM.
Okay. And what is it? What does SM stand for? Service mark?
It just means service mark.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Right.
So it's the same thing, but so a trademark is attached to either a good or a service, right? And
Uh-huh.
so if you're unregistered and attached to a good, you put the TM. If you're unregistered and attached to a service, you put the SM.
Okay. I got you.
And then either way,
That's
if you're
cool.
registered, you just put the R.
All right.
Right.
That's actually really, really, really cool information. So any of you comic creators out there make comics, listen to that. If you're like most independent comic creators, you can't afford, don't have the kind of finances to go through and do a lot of the legal stuff that we all know we should do. So you just heard you can go ahead and put the TM there. That means you're claiming that you haven't registered it. So don't put any R's, anybody, unless you've registered that. But go ahead and put the TMs to claim those for yourselves. That's
every
great
single one of
information.
your books. Everyone.
Yeah, that's fantastic information.
Yeah, sir. Even when you have stuff online, right, on
Mhm.
your websites, right, you should have that there as well.
Wow. Okay. Cool. I think
So, Roland, does that mean you're going to be putting in new covers for everything?
yeah. You know what I'm going to be working on here the next week, don't you?
There you go.
It's like I'm going to be sending Tommy, Kablam,
Oh,
all these files.
those damn people.
Hey, can this is my new cover. This is my new cover. This is my new cover. Just replace all the covers. Here you go. Vic asked a question. I think we touched on a little bit, but he says if you don't protect the trademark, you can lose it, right?
Yes, you can. I mean, okay, so the answer is it depends, right?
Okay.
So if you don't protect it and you allow
Yeah,
people
that's
to
the other part of it.
encroach,
Yeah.
right? Like it's not just about whether or not you're actively doing something, it's about are other people actively like using it, right? And
Right.
so if there are enough people who are, using that trademark or they're getting trademarks that are substantially similar to your trademark, right? And you're not going after them, right? Then, you're not, you're not being litigious and protective of your trademark, right? Then you can lose it, right? Because, an argument that is used before the USPTO is, hey, this trademark, there are like 3 other trademarks that are substantially similar and all of them have been registered. And so, even though our mark conflicts with, Mark 1, Mark 2, 3, and 4 are also similar to Mark 1, and they're all registered.
Right.
So I should be registered as well because Mark
know where
1
I'm
is a weak mark because 2, 3, and 4 are similar and blah blah blah. So so yeah, you could lose your trademark if you don't protect it and enough other people use marks that are either the same or substantially similar.
Yeah, you know where I'm about to go, don't you, Tommy? Phil Leon says, "Hey-o, Roland, Tom, Josh, and Silverline peeps. What's up, Phil?" For those who aren't aware, Phil is an artist himself, and he is the colorist for Silverline's very own White Devil. If you got any legal questions, Phil, time now is to ask. So here's a question. I'm gonna because we kind of talked about this a little bit last time, so I don't want to rehash some of this ground that Tommy and I talk about frequently. So
I know where you're going.
Yeah, you do know where I'm going. So JC, you and I have even talked about
number 1 right on my list. Number 1.
So JC, you and I have even talked about this a little bit. So
Yes, sir.
So if you go to comic conventions today, it's not unusual to see the quote unquote local artist there with a big banner of artwork behind him featuring Spider-Man and Batman and Star Wars, and there's no debate that's illegal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we're not even going to get into that because you know it, I know it, Tommy knows it. Maybe some of our listeners don't know it, but that's illegal. But here's my question to you.
Well, why is it illegal?
So the reason it's illegal.
That's a good
Okay,
thing because
sure.
these people claim that well, I drew it. Of course, I can sell it. I can make copies of it and sell it. I drew it. I mean, I do. And they go, I know I didn't create Spider-Man and it belongs to Marvel, but I
I
drew
drew
it.
that one.
Yeah, and I just making selling my prints of it. Why isn't that legal? I mean, I drew it. So why is it illegal? It's the copyright part, right?
So when you have a copyright, which of course Marvel and DC do have on all of their characters,
Right.
right? What it gives you is it gives you the right of reproduction,
There you go.
adaptation, distribution,
Bingo.
performance, and display. Okay, right. And so it also with limited protection for like attribution and integrity afforded to some works. And so what this means is that when you're talking about reproduction of the character, right? When you draw Spider-Man, you just reproduce Spider-Man.
Right.
Okay. And some people are like, well,
But let's
what
say
if
I put, yeah, you're going there.
like, well, what if I put Spider-Man in my style or change his outfit or something like that, right?
Add claws to him.
Right, and that's called adaptation, right? Which I also named as one of the things that fall under the rights you get with the copyright, right?
Yeah.
And so what happens is now there are exceptions to there are certain exceptions when it comes to copyright, like certain things like fair use, right? So if you're doing it for educational or nonprofit reason, things like this, right?
That's on my list.
So if you've got like educational use, there's nonprofit use, things like this, right? There's parody as well, right? That's something else in addition, and things like that you can do. And if you actually fall under one of those categories, right, then you're not infringing, right? But aside from parody, you pretty much have to be giving your stuff away for free if you're trying to fall under like nonprofit and these other exceptions. And so obviously most of the stuff when you see that they're selling it, like all of the stuff,
Right.
They're not just giving away their Spider-Man drawings for free or their Spider-Man t-shirts, whatever.
Right.
And so because of that, you are either you're making an adaptation or reproduction of the character, and so you're violating the rights of in Spider-Man's case, Marvel or
right,
and so so when you're doing that, you're violating their copyright because they have the right to copy that character, right? And so so when you do that and you sell it, you're violating their rights.
So are we saying that they don't have the right to just do your little sketch thing? We're saying that the place that's making the copies of it to sell, that's illegal too, right? They're not even that's the problem we get with Kablam. When somebody's doing a pinup book, or and they all of a sudden we're looking through there and there's a bunch of Spider-Man pinups in it and this, that, and the other, and we unfortunately, I mean they Kablam has to tell them, we can't print this stuff unless you have permission from Marvel. So if you give us that paperwork saying that Marvel said you had the permission to run Spider-Man in your book, then I can't tell you how many Star Wars books that we have that are just beautiful Star Wars books, and the people that have, and it's heartbreaking when you see all these books that we get sometimes. I mean, it's at least a half a dozen a month.
Yeah.
And then we're like, oh man, you have put in a year worth of time, because a lot of these people are just doing it in their part time, and like we can't print this, and they're like, why not? I drew it. It's not, and I'm like, we don't want somebody to come and take our printers. I mean, Kablam doesn't want somebody to come and shut and put tape on the door and say you can't open.
Oh, this is
right.
good.
So it's and that's a good practice, right? That is exactly what your lawyers will tell you to do, right? It's easier it would be easier for Marvel to go after the people who are drawing the art and and doing all the sales and stuff. It'd be a little easier to go after them than the printer, but you could definitely still go after the printer, right? And so, so if you want, here's the list. Actually, I'll name it. I've named the government use and stuff, but to be more specific, right? There's, government use. There's personal copies for private use. right? And so obviously government use is automatically off, right? Because none of the people who are at these comic cons are there on behalf of the government, right? Right. So they're not drawing Spider-Man,
Right.
government, right? Right. So that's off, right? Personal copies for private use, right? So if a 5-year-old kid draws Spider-Man, right? Disney can't send lawyers to go destroy the family, right? Right? Regardless of how much they may want to.
True.
But because that's just a personal copy for private use, right? So if you're not displaying it publicly, right? Because if you display it publicly, it's not a private use, even if you're not selling it, right? If you draw something that you're not selling, but you display it publicly, that's not private use, right? So that would fall under copyright infringement.
Okay.
Okay.
So
because the right to display the work is also one of the rights that are under copyright, right?
Oh,
So think of a movie, for example, right? When you buy a DVD, right? You can't just get a thing, shoot it on the side of a building, and just charge people for admission to watch your screen DVD or whatever.
I remember several years ago, Kristen, my wife works for years worked at the universities, and one of the things the fraternities would do is they would rent a movie and project it on a big screen and get all the brothers in to watch it. And the university, I can't remember which one, but the university she worked at, they had to put a stop to it. They were like, "Hey, you can't do that.
You can't do that."
Yeah,
Exactly.
you can rent. As a fraternity, you can't. You're breaking the law because you're broadcasting it to all your frat brothers, and that is not. You can't. You can sit in your room and watch it.
Right. And so because the DVD, it comes with it. So basically, right, there's like a bundle of sticks, all of these different rights, they're a bundle of sticks, right? And so the copyright owner can sell pieces of the stick or temporarily rent out, if you will, aka a stick or part of a stick, right? And so like when you look at a DVD, what you're getting is you're getting a permanent license to play that work privately. Okay, that's what you're getting. Okay.
Yeah.
When you buy a DVD, right? And so, when you look at like public viewings and stuff, right, there's a special license that you would have to get in order to be able to display the work publicly, right? And that would require, contract with whoever owns that work. And so so coming back to the comic book convention scenario, right? When you're just displaying that work publicly, right? That will not count for your personal copies for private use. So personal private copies for private use, also scholarly, educational, or religious purposes. Those are also exempted, but you can have no more than 5 copies. Okay.
Yeah.
So so there's that as well for scholarly, educational, or religious purposes. But yeah, again, no more than 5 copies. And if Marvel were to come after you, right? Like you're going to lose if you're saying, "Oh yeah, I'm selling these things and selling these things in Comic-Con for scholarly and educational purposes."
Yeah.
No,
right? Like
you're not.
You're losing. You are definitely.
Here's a good question that Vic has, right? So Vic is, to put it in perspective, Vic is I don't know exactly how old Vic, but I know you've said these kind of things before. Vic's a young artist, right? Working to break into the industry. So Vic says, "Can I use licensed stuff in my portfolio?" So I know that as an editor, one of the things we used to always have to do at wow, okay, Vic, I did not realize you were that young. Vic is 15, so
oh boy.
Vic is a young artist working to break into the comic book industry. So often, for those of you who might not know, artists will put together in a big portfolio thing samples of their work to demonstrate to a potential employee, "Hey, look, I can draw this. I can draw this." So what Vic is asking in this question is, can I use licensed stuff in my portfolio? So can he include
copyrighted material.
Spider-Man, and can he include Batman and that kind of thing?
Right. So it's a little, that one's a little dicier. It's going to depend on what sort of promises he's making. If all he's saying is if he's not trying to publicly display these things, right? He's sending.
What if he puts it on his website as his portfolio? Here's examples of my, because I see a lot of artists put here's my portfolio to just demonstrate what I can do. And sure enough, there's 2 or 3, 4 pages of Spider-Man, 2 or 3 pages of Batman.
So I mean that's dicey, right? Once you put it online, right, and it's out there, that's dicey. It really would depend. It depends, right? Does that count as public display? Is the website open for everybody to go? Is it a private link that you only send to certain people when you're looking for a job? Right, like all of these things.
Well, it's on DeviantArt, so yes, everybody can see it.
So all of these things would come into play, right? And now, one thing that I'll say is that it's not in Disney or DC's best interest per se to just start going after everybody who they could go after, right? So keep that in mind as well. Right, they have the ability to go after you, but it's not necessarily in their best interest because they look like the bad guy. Today on the news, Disney attacks 15-year-old kid. Who's trying to make a living. And,
it's just my dream to draw Spider-Man, and they won't let me.
Yeah, it's like I'm just trying to support myself and live my dream. Like, oh man, that would be. That wouldn't exactly be the headline.
That would be Disney would bad publicity at that point.
Yeah, although I'm sure ABC would spin it in a light that's more favorable to Disney. Disney defends itself against attack.
Against copyright infringement.
Goes to Disney. What about, I mean, this is all in that same thing. What about doing commissions at shows? Legally, that should be a no-no, but we're all doing it. I mean, I don't print anything anymore. But no, it's for sale.
Money, isn't it?
Yeah, they're for sale. You're doing something for sale. No, but I'm not actually drawing it for them. No, I'm just selling them a piece of paper. It just so happens I scribbled something on it.
So if I come up to Tommy and ask him to draw the Mandalorian for me, and I'll give him $20 for it.
No,
that's a private transaction.
You can buy this piece of gum, and I'll just throw this piece of art on the table. You can walk off with it.
That sounds like a church trick. A lot of churches do things like that to get around the law.
I mean, yeah, right. Like that would be trying to get around the law. I mean, if Disney were to take you to court, right, the court would evaluate all of the facts in order to come to a conclusion as to what was actually being sold.
Right.
And also the thing is, right, the exception is, right, a private drawing, right, or whatever for personal use, right? In other words, the person who's creating the thing is using it for themselves, right? Mm-hmm. What you're talking about by nature is on the outside of that definition because the person who's creating the thing is creating it for someone else's use.
Somebody can you to draw something. Yeah.
Right. So it would not fall under that personal use exception. Even if it were, the court were to find that all that was being sold was the paper.
Yeah.
So you're saying officially that's still a no-no.
Yeah.
Right. Officially that's still a no-no. It's a little dicier. But that's still definitely that's still a no-no though. If they wanted to, they could shut all of that down. Like I mean, they could literally just have a lawyer just stand there.
Yeah,
with the camera.
Right?
I mean, they could catch you red-handed, right? Like they could literally just catch you red-handed.
Yeah, if they were to actually do this at shows, they would shut down all the shows because this is what's going on at every convention. I mean, we do have the what I like to call the poster pirates, which I think I just feel that it's just totally wrong to do. But
I'm sorry.
this is just as wrong. You're saying officially by the law,
Right.
doing commissions.
Oh,
Oh,
this big. I'm selling this piece of paper and some ink. How it turns out was beyond
but
my
I don't
control.
know. I don't know how that happened. That's weird.
Vic,
No,
I
it's
do
not
see your other
Batman.
question about the movie and a group, but I'm not gonna ask that one because I want to stick with comics. It's an interesting question, and I think JC could answer, but our clock is running, so I want to stick with
Tick tick
comics.
tick
So
tick tick tick.
yeah. So before I get to Phil's got another question here. So does the number of people, because what we just established about commissions, not right. Does the number of people doing it have any bearing on its legality at all? So in other words, we walk into San Diego Comic-Con and you walk down to Artist Alley and there are 50 artists, all of them super popular, and they're all doing commissions.
50. You mean 500 artists? They're all
500. Yeah, there's a whole lot more than that.
level
Yeah, there's a whole lot,
ability and
a whole lot more than, and they're all doing commissions of licensed characters.
stuff.
That's a whole bunch of them. Does that make it any more legal because there's so many doing it?
No, sir. That doesn't make it any more legal or any
A big
more
group
illegal.
of people doing
right?
illegal stuff.
If Disney walks in there and there's only one person doing it, they can go after him. If Disney walks in there and there's 5,000 people doing it, they can go after each and every
Yeah.
one of you, right?
Yeah.
Because each and every one of you have violated or infringed on their copyright. The only situation in which, well, one of the only situations in which it would actually matter how many people are doing it is if Disney went after the Comic Con, okay? Because then the argument is going to be, okay, you either knew or should have known that this was happening in there, and so therefore you facilitated the infringement of our copyrights, and you're essentially, a malactor in this whole scheme
Right.
of copyright infringement, right? And so in that case, how many people are doing it would be relevant, right? Because if it's just only one guy, right? Well, how are they gonna, how would they know, right? How would they know, right?
Yeah.
Right? At least that's what they would argue, right? There's no way for us to have known. We managed thousands of people.
Yeah, so they were all selling their original stuff. Everybody was
Right.
drawing, but it looked like they were drawing their own characters and stuff.
Yeah.
Except
But
that
if you walk
Spider-Man.
in and yeah, exactly. But if you walk in and like everyone in Artist Alley is selling this copyrighted works, right? Then then there's no argument really that will hold much water that the Comic Con can put forth in order to escape liability.
Well, this kind of goes back to what you were saying before. So if Marvel and DC and any other Dark Horse, whoever, Disney is turning away, blind eye, are they not? Are they? What did we call it a while ago? Where you're letting people do the stuff that they're not supposed to be doing. So are they going to lose their? That's one of the questions. Are they going to lose their copyright? And the second part, I guess this would be is if they, because this is what we all say that are doing commissions and stuff, that for the most part, Marvel and DC and stuff, they kind of encourage it a little bit. Especially when I was doing it, they didn't. So should they actually come up with a contract that they give specific artists, saying that, look, you can draw, because usually what they say is, if you're working on, say you're working on Amazing Spider-Man, or you're working on some Batman book or Iron Man or whatever, you go to a show, you're there promoting the book. They want you to kind of draw Spider-Man and Batman and blah blah blah. So should they actually come up with a working, even if it's a yearly contract or a show contract, saying that you're cool. Here, you draw whatever you want. You can't make copies of it, but you can draw with it.
So if they did that, here's just a few considerations. If they did that, right?
Yeah.
They would instantly, whatever that form is, whatever that approval process is, that blue check mark, if you will, that ear circle check mark, if you will, would basically be a kingmaker. Okay.
Yeah.
So now whatever artist or artists
Yes.
got that check mark, right? I mean, they would be kings, right? Because they would be able to say, "Oh, I'm the only one."
I'm the only one that can draw your commission Spider-Man's official commission.
Exactly. And you know what'd be interesting, right? In that case, and this you probably just solved something. I don't know if Disney's thought about this, but if they were to do that, right? If they were to do that, and then they gave the person the right to enforce that against other people who infringe, right? Now Disney no longer has to be the one suing, right?
Right.
Right.
Artist Billy Bo Art can then go sue, Bobo over there and say, I have I've got this contract to do Spider-Man.
Stop drawing Spider-Man.
Because
I have been given authority to go after you, right?
Yeah.
Now pay me money, right? Right. And so then Disney gets to be like, oh my. We never saw this coming, oh wow, right?
Right.
Their hands are clean. They're not the ones getting, they're not like the big stomping on this little 15-year-old, right? They can let the 30-year-old artist do that, right? And so but here's the thing, right? Here's one reason why, even though that actually would be a pretty viable option, and then maybe there's like some clause that Disney has in that contract that says any winnings you get, you give X% to us or something like that, right? But and then that would handle it. Like,
well, I mean, if they turn in their right to letting you do it anyway, wouldn't making it legal so that way and you can control the characters a little more and not have some real funky looking bad. Because we've been to some shows and seen some really bad Spider-Mans, and I'm looking at this. I'm like,
I mean, it'd be the thing though that right. You'd have to have this approval process. There'd have to be some sort of application process or something, right? And in order to, the amount of manpower that it would take,
they don't want to.
If they actually started this, and the only reason for this to actually mean anything is if there was some sort of an enforcement arm, right? Otherwise, there's no reason for anybody to go through the process, right? Except for bragging rights, right? So in order for this to actually be meaningful, there would have to be enforcement, which means either Disney is enforcing or Disney's doing something like what I said earlier, and they're empowering the approved checkmark people to enforce, right? And so, in other words, it would take Disney, you'd have to have some meaningful thing to enforce, and then you would have to have this application process, which would require manpower, right? And so they're like, okay, do we want to, put X millions of dollars into hiring a whole group of people to go through all of this, and we've got to create a website specifically for this, and we've got to, have our very, very expensive lawyers write this all up and do all this stuff and blah, 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 right? And then we've got to have people to watch the artists to make sure that they're fine with everything. And they're not
the reality is this is the reason why that there are everybody's drawn stuff and there's posters up all over the place. It's just too hard to control, right?
That's one of the reasons. Another reason is simply this, right? That's one reason. Another reason is there's two more reasons that I'll list here. One is very simple and straightforward. Whoever's the first to strike is the bad guy. Right. The one who, as far as between the major companies, I'm saying, whoever strikes first is the bad guy. The person who strikes after that is just following established precedent.
Right.
Okay? Right. And so, so neither of them want to be the first to strike. All right. And that's another consideration, right? Because if DC strikes first, Marvel's like, hey, look, we're the good guys.
Right.
And vice versa if Marvel strikes first.
Well, we got to do it if they're doing it. Yeah.
That's right.
Right. And then, but then after the precedent is set and after they've got the boon from the increased fan loyalty, then they'll go and turn around and do it.
Right.
Or to blow up in their face, from the fans going, oh, now I can't go get my drawings and little sketches and stuff.
And now that actually leads to the third thing.
Oh, I'm sorry. You had a checklist too, just like that.
So that leads to the third thing, and that's this. Imagine if DC, Marvel, Dark Horse, etc., enforced their copyrights. Okay? It would mean that every artist you see, every comic book creator, every person making shirts, etc., would have to only put forth characters that they own or have license to, which means the indie market would boom.
Right.
Yeah, that's what we hope.
Like that,
Yeah.
a lot of non-Marvel, non-DC, non-Dark Horse characters would become more popular than they ever had a chance of being otherwise.
And that's why they're not going to do it, because they don't want us to take over.
Exactly. It would be like that.
I do want to point out, I do find it amusing when a lawyer says very, very expensive lawyers.
Excellent.
Clock is just running like crazy here. BJ Mann says, "Congratulations, JC."
Who's that BJ? Who's that person? Get off of there, BJ.
She's only listening because JC's on.
She never listens.
Yeah.
So, I appreciate
it. So Phil asked a question about parodies. Phil, I'm gonna have to.
Oh, that was another question I had.
I was gonna say I got to put your.
About part two? We need to do a part two.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do a part two because Phil's got a question here, but I wanna circle back to part of the
Oh, you sound like a press secretary. You want to circle back?
Let's circle back. I want to circle back. So when we talked about when you talked about seeing,
that's a cool cup, by the way.
It is a cup. Look at that! What? Trumps? How cool is that? Woohoo! All right.
I'm working on the fourth one. 1 page to go.
And for those of
All
you
right.
who don't know, I don't have a comic book handy. That's Trumps. Yeah, Tommy just said working on issue number 4.
Yeah,
you're
gonna have to go. I was almost done with one now. I should finish it tonight.
We're gonna kickstart it in November. So
yay!
You'll get ready for that. So if you're an independent creator, and now, so one of the things I hear frequently, all right, when you talk about the kind of thing about the poster pirates and all these artists doing prints of licensed characters, and when you say, oh well, that's illegal, a lot of them will say, well, it's okay, it's just Marvel and DC. And then I hear creators sometimes say, I would love it if someone would take my character and do illegal prints of. Now, I get the sentiment. The sentiment is, I wish my character was popular enough that an artist would see the need to draw that character and make a print. So I get the sentiment, but in the back of my mind, I'm hearing that's not a good idea to not protect the mark the character that you've created. If you're a creator and you were to see that, what would you suggest that creator do in order to protect that to protect their character?
Well, the first thing is that you'd like to have a form letter, ideally one written by a lawyer. You could just write it yourself if you want to, but everything has more oomph when you actually have a lawyer who knows what they're talking about and knows the law and everything. Write the letter, right? And it is aware of what sort of steps to take in the event that this person decides to play hardball with you.
Legalese can sound scary.
Right, exactly. And so we know how to get things done, right. And fully able to do it, right? And so what you would do is the first step is to see if you can resolve things amicably. And
so just go up to them and say, "Hey, dude, that's not cool. Don't do it."
Well, I would do it in a it depends on the situation. It depends on the situation, right? I wouldn't quite do it like that, but very amicably with like the stick in your hand, right? Right? Like
paperwork with official paperwork. Yeah,
right, exactly.
Sue you, but here's the paperwork saying stop it, or we're going to have to talk about this. And so there's no ifs, ands, or or maybes,
exactly.
This is official.
The way Mr. Rowland was talking about, that's if you're like friends with the person, who's doing this, in which case you can be like, all right, it's like, all right, Thomas,
Sorry, I won't do it anymore. Yeah, I'm gonna still keep doing it. I know. Yeah. Cool.
Okay. Cool. All right, Tommy, your question then. that was kind of my question. Is like, if you're the creator, I mean, and again, I hear so many independent creators say, I wish my character was popular enough that artists would do that. And again, I get the sentiment, but I still think, no, that just means someone is stealing from Vic says, time to sell some Trump's fan art.
Oh no! Hey, dude, we said you can't do that. Please
That's
stop.
right.
Please don't do that. No, I'll do a part 2 whenever we
Okay.
can do this again.
Right.
So, because I wanted to go into stuff about contracts and things like that. We can
All
do
right.
that. Stuff there.
So we are. My clock does read 9:35. So JC, may we ask you to come back and talk to us about some law stuff, legal stuff with comics some other time?
Yes, sir.
Excellent.
Yes,
So
Yippee,
we will.
yippee.
Who knows? Maybe we'll see if we can't get JC to come back every so often, and we'll just have some new legal stuff to come up. Maybe we'll talk, see what might be good for you, but I don't know, maybe once a quarter or something like that. Get on here and talk some legal stuff.
We need to give him like the pass thing so he can jump on there. So when we're talking some crap, he can just pop up in there and say, "Guys, you are idiots. Quit saying that." And then he'll go away. He just come on there and say, "That you guys are just totally wrong. Shut up," and then leave the chat. That kind of thing. That'd be pretty fun.
We get really some little videos of him, little video clips.
Yeah, shut up! You guys are so wrong, and then boom, then he's gone. And like,
or maybe even have him have a piece of typed paper, right? You've been served.
Shut up! You don't know what you're talking about.
Vic says this. He needs to be the official Silverline lawyer. Vic, I think that sounds really cool. Oh, look at this. Even Saxon Amen says, get JC on retainer, guys. Woohoo! Well, we love JC. JC knows we love him.
Yes, sir.
And thank you so much for spending the last hour and a half with us talking law stuff. I think you and I have talked about this, and I think that for independent comic book makers, I think there's so many things that they don't do that they should do that they don't do, and I think law and legal stuff I know it does me. A lot of it intimidates people because it sounds so scary a lot of times, and
it is scary a lot of times.
Yeah. And yet it's something that if you're going to create intellectual property, you should really work to protect. Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to put all that effort into doing it, and then all that time, and then the money and stuff,
right,
you'd like to protect it a little bit.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, it may not ever be Mickey Mouse. But...
Yeah, even if nobody ever reads it, but you still want to, you created it. Yeah. You should. Yeah. Yep.
Absolutely. All right. JC, do you have a place that, let's say somebody listening to this saying, you know what, I need to seek out, well, let's say Herrenberg, probably won't.
Sounds like Herrenberg needs to talk to you.
Sounds like he needs a lawyer. Do you have a place that folks can reach out to you for legal help now?
So I'm getting some things as far as websites and stuff launched right now. I'm just in that process.
So that we're a little premature with that question.
Well, as a preliminary, like a temporary source of contact, you can contact me directly at expect2@outlook.com.
Okay, expect2achieve@outlook.com.
Yes, sir.
All right. So any of you guys or gals, comic book guys and gals listening right now,
we can add that on to the
yes,
to the info part of the YouTube page and all that kind of what the people say. The info down below, we'll put that in there. So
yeah, and very cool. Yeah, the next time, yeah. So you guys get questions. Reach out to JC. This is his thing. This is what he knows. This is what he spent time studying. And the same way that you and I spent time learning to make comic books, he spent time learning how to protect that stuff. So, JC, again, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Tommy, what about you? Where can folks find you on the interwebs?
I got to put my Halloween hat back on. Go on to the Googles and type Florimonte. I'm pretty much the only one doing comics, and you spell it as you can see on there, Florimonte. And I say I spell it out for you guys because you cannot seem to spell my name right. So there it is. And then I'm just everywhere. You can.
All right.
It's easy. If you type Florimonte, you'll find me. Or it's my dad, and then he'll claim that he did all the work. So
Right.
don't send my dad any money because he'll keep it.
And you can find me at Rollin' Man or Man Rollin' on all the social medias. Just look me up there. And of course, don't forget that. You know what? I forgot to shout out. We're part of the Madness Comic Network now.
Oh,
I forgot to mention that at the top of the stream. I'm sorry, Pop. If you're listening.
You're in trouble.
We are so excited to be part of this network and to welcome in all of our possible new viewers and listeners. We are glad to be a part of this network and hope that you guys, I don't know what that means. Flower Mountain, right?
Flower of the Mountain. He knows it. Yeah, Twin Savior, Flower of the Mountain. My whole name, Junior. Got to add the Junior part. That's Florimonte means Flower of the Mountain.
Oh, okay. I'm
Yeah,
I'm totally lost on this.
Somebody knows they're Italian. Yeah, Thomas Salvatore Florimonte.
So we got don't forget, we'll be back here next week. I don't know what our topic is. I forgot what it is, or I may not have come up with it yet. We'll be back here next week at 8 p.m. Don't forget, we've got a Tuesday stream. That Tuesday show, those guys are a little bit later because they're Pacific Coast time. They start 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Wednesday Wham will be here. JC, hang on a few minutes after the end of the stream. And until then, remember to make mine Silverline. All right. Good night, everyone.
I'm Pat Broderick. Make mine Silverline.